So as you can tell, it is raining outside and we are going to start on the disassembly of the engine. At the moment, I'm going ahead and taking off the headers because this is probably the first thing that would break. Thankfully, all of the studs spun, so we're good. Nothing's going to break off in here. So I'm going to go ahead and take the manifold off, and then we're going to start disassembling the intake manifold as well, and the fuel rail, yada yada. And we're going to clean everything up from the bottom up, and we're going to start putting some new gaskets in this thing, and we'll get some new hoses. The block's looking pretty good here. I thought it would be way worse, to be honest, because I didn't know if the manifold was taken off ever, but thankful for that. We're going to go ahead and take off the fuel rail and these hoses so we can pop this out of here and we can get the intake manifold off. There's 2 bolts to the fuel rail, 1 and 2. So just pop those guys out and shimmy out all of the injectors. Now that we got the injectors and the fuel rail out of here, we can see all the bolts right up front here. Got the injectors sitting over here. And I went ahead and cleaned up the fuel rail. It was all black. So I took a Scotch-Brite, just cleaned it up a little bit. We're gonna go ahead and paint this so that way when we put it back in, it'll look nice. And we're gonna get to taking this off. I'm going to do a short route of this hose here because this down here loops up into here and then down again. So we're gonna go ahead and delete this loop, go from here down to there instead of going up and through. All right, so we got the fuel rail all taped up, ready for paint. We're gonna go ahead and spray this real quick, give it a few coats, and then we'll let it dry. Getting to taking the intake manifold off by the head here. We have a stud with a nut here, a stud with a nut here. We have 2 bolts in the middle, and then we have 1 more bolt on the side here. So I'm gonna get all these off. Okay, so now that I got all of the bolts up top out, we need to get right here. And they're really long, so the plenum has to come off first. I got 3 of these bolts back here out. And then we just need to get these 2 right here. And then the intake plenum should just pop right off, and then we can get those long bolts out. All right, now that we got that out of there, we can go ahead and get to these little bolts here. Long bolts, I should say. So if the plenum was on here, it would just be hitting the plenum. So we got that. Sweet. Now let's pull this off. So I tried removing it, but I had to go ahead and loosen this just a little bit. You can keep the bolt in there, and now it should pop off. All right, so we basically got this thing out of here. I just have to go and undo this heater core hose, which runs on that hard line all the way back to the firewall. And then I have to undo this hose as well, and then this will just pop right off. So now we actually have it off. Hoses are all disconnected. Now we can start getting to cleaning up the plenum and intake manifold. The main focus that I want to be focusing on really about the intake manifold are these butterflies here. So we could take them out. That way we can get a little bit more throttle response and maybe a little more horsepower. So yeah, we'll get those out of there. Just finished cleaning up the intake plenum. Gonna go ahead and put this to the side here. And we're gonna be cleaning this up. I already sprayed this hose here, the hard line, and then just this little bung. just for aesthetic purposes. Not really gonna see this, it's underneath anyways, but just for a peace of mind, I'm gonna go ahead and get a wire brush and start cleaning the manifold up. So now that we got the intake manifold and the intake plenum cleaned up, I'm going ahead and taking out the butterflies. So what I'm really having to do here is going ahead and sticking my screwdriver right there and then hitting it with a hammer while you turn, and it's pretty as simple as that to get them out. Taking this last butterfly out here. And I forgot to mention, holding this open, just push it down all the way, make sure this flap is touching this piece of metal. I went ahead and just shoved the screwdriver in there to keep it all straight. And then you're also gonna have to take out this little screw in the middle. That's what's holding the whole thing in place. And then yeah, I would use the same method as shock it with a hammer. And yeah, we'll just pull this on out. All right, I was having a little problem with these screws here to take the bracket off for this, and same thing, just go ahead and put your screwdriver in, smack it with a hammer. That was a little bit of a pain to get it out, but we got it out. When you are taking off the butterflies, make sure not to hit it too hard, or you will have some bends in this straight line here, and it will not let you pull it out. But what we're gonna be doing next is cutting this piece right around here, so that way we can throw this little butterfly looking thing back in this hole so we don't have a major air leak there. And then we gotta also go ahead and throw the screw from the middle back in so we don't have an air leak there as well. All right, so we got that little piece cut for the butterflies. And since now they're not there, we're gonna have to go ahead and take out this seal, and then we're gonna put some JB weld all up along this and fill the hole inside there, because it does come out to here and we will have a vacuum leak if we don't. So I'm gonna do that real quick. I'm gonna go ahead and cut these two little hard lines off, because all it is a bypass. And yeah, we already rerouted that hose. I went ahead and took off the hard line that goes there, got it all painted up nice. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and cut this off so that way it looks just a little bit cleaner. Now to get the other one. All right, so we got them off. That looks a lot nicer. I'm gonna go ahead and clean this up and then yeah, throw it back together. All right, we got the oil pan off, but I just flipped the engine a little bit on the side, and I went ahead and put a wood block on it and just hit it with a hammer. Came off pretty easy. So we're gonna get to doing the oil pan gasket. All right, so with the oil pan off, you're gonna wanna clean all of this gasket stuff up. There's a little bit of spots with grooves in it, so it might be just a little bit hard to get it with a razor blade, but I do recommend getting your razor blade and getting the top off with just the razor blade. Came off pretty nice and neat. I would suggest doing that. But for the bottom of the oil pan, I would go ahead and take a wire wheel and just go all the way around, and it'll come off pretty easy. It shouldn't damage anything. Just do it kind of light. Don't dig in or anything. But yeah, I'm gonna do that real quick and I'll show you what it looks like. So here we have the oil pan all cleaned up. I went ahead and used some brake clean to get the inside all nice and clear of any debris. I need to start to tear down the engine just a little bit more. I did find a plastic piece in there, and it happened to be from my timing chain guide. I had to go ahead and align the engine perfectly at top dead center. As you can see, we have a chain link painted red. There's two chain links that are about silver instead of this grayish color. You want one of those chain links to end up marked with that little cam gear dot at about 3 o'clock. Then you want your crankshaft pulley to be lined up at the second from the left. And then you want your distributor cap taken off so you can see that it is correctly aligned with your first spark plug. If you'd like to figure out if the bottom is correct, I have mine marked white right there. You can see those two little white marks right there. That is the other chain link that is silver. That's about 5 o'clock. So everything is top dead center. I'm gonna go ahead and take off the alternator, and then we're gonna start taking all the rest of the pulleys off. Now on to getting the timing cover off. We have one 10mm here, two 10mm here, and one 10mm here for the top bolts. And you will have 7 12mm bolts. One here, 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 there, there, and there. And then this whole timing cover should be able to pop off after you get your pulley out of there. Alright, so we got all those bolts out, and we got to take the oil pump out. And we got. Now that we got the entire thing timed and we have the timing cover off, we're going to go ahead and start disassembling the guides and the chain and possibly the gear. What you do is zip tie your chain to the cam gear so that way it does not fall off. Do that real quick. You're going to want to zip tie right in between here, pull it tight, zip tie right here, pull it tight. Go ahead and take off your guides and your tensioner, and then I'll show you what to do from there. The guide wasn't too bad, but it did break off right, let me see if I can get it right there. As you can see, this is the piece that I found in the pan, and yeah, if any of that other stuff started breaking, then we would have just have a whole bunch of plastic in the oil pan. So we're gonna replace all of it. You'll most likely need 2 hands for this, or you can have a friend hold the gear and pull it through the bottom. But as you can see, I zip tied it onto the gear so that way you can see where it's lined up. This bottom one's lined up perfectly down at the bottom with the dot right there on the gear. So you should be able to match up the new gear with the chain. And as I did already, these 2 black chain links are in line with where these are. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw on the new gear and new chain. Just set the new cam gear and chain on. Chain still lines up with the dot at the bottom gear, and same as top gear. There's only one way to put it on, so it cannot really be messed with. Made sure the thickness and all the teeth were the same on this cam gear as the old one, so that should be perfect. So for the front main seal here, what I did is just took a flathead and hit the top part of the seal down, and you can just go ahead and pull it out from the other side. Mine seems to have came off in 2 pieces, but that's okay. Clean this in here. What I went ahead and did to get my seal in is just evenly put a piece of wood across and go ahead and smack it in the middle until it starts going in evenly, and then just keep going up and down until that entire seal is fully seated in there, smooth. After you have your cover clear of the old sealant and you have your new front main in, don't forget to go ahead and replace these. They usually come with your timing kit. I have a brand new one here for the smaller one, and then the bigger one here. Make sure you put them in the exact orientation that they are on the cover already. All you're gonna wanna do to get those in there is just put a little bit of gasket maker on the inside and then place this straight on top. Same as with this one. I put a little bit more in the crack there, just so that way it would seal and stay in place. That won't hurt anything. But I'm gonna go ahead and lay a bead across this entire thing and then go ahead and throw it back in the engine. You're gonna wanna have your valve cover with about 2 millimeters worth of a bead around the entire thing. And we're gonna go ahead and throw this on. Be very careful when trying to slide the timing cover back on. I have it just tapped into place here. There's no bolts. It's just holding on its own. I went ahead and put the cranked pulley back on. I'm gonna go ahead and put all the bolts in hand tight, and then about an hour or two later, we're gonna tighten them down, and then the timing cover should be done. We can go ahead and throw in the oil pump and the distributor again, and then get the valve cover situated and the oil pan situated. One little tip, you can tell if your gasket is seated correctly if you have a little bit squishing out the side here. You can see right there, squishing out the side. That'll give you a good indicator that your sealant is sealing well. And we're gonna wait about an hour. One thing you could do while you're waiting for your timing cover to dry before torquing all those bolts in is throw in your oil pump with the new gasket and those bolts as well. And then you can go ahead and pop your distributor back in. Just got the distributor tightened back up. I made a red line right there. You can kind of see it for the positions of the bolts, so that way I didn't have to mess with doing that. Now we got the whole timing cover back on with the oil pump, with the distributor. Now we just have to do the valve cover and do the oil pan and put back the crank. Now that we've waited about an hour, we can go ahead and torque down our timing cover bolts. The timing cover torqued to spec. I'm going ahead and moving on to our next task. I had to do a lot of research to figure out where it should go on the single cam. Dual cams are a little more accessible and easier to find, but if you are running no AC, right around here up at the top is a good plan for you. If you are running with AC or plan to get AC, I'm gonna go right about here where this bolt is still accessible and get it up as high as possible, not blocking being able to take off the threads to your actual feed line. We got our hole marked. We're gonna go ahead and drill that out. There is no going back now. We got our pilot hole drilled. We're gonna go ahead and make that bigger so we can get the fitting in there. So I just went ahead and got the oil pan free of grease, and I went ahead and painted it. So now we're gonna go ahead and take some sandpaper, clean up around where that hole is, so that way the JB weld can adhere properly and we shouldn't have any issues. Now we got our oil bung just mocked up in there. It's just sitting in there tight. And now we can go ahead and throw some JB weld on that. As you can see, we have the bung JB welded in. We're gonna go ahead and let that dry for about 24 hours, and then we're gonna come back to it and then get this pan sealed back on the engine. Going ahead and replacing the injector O-rings. I went ahead and put these in first because they looked like they were just a little bit too big, but they fit in there just right. And I gotta put these two in. I have to take these little O-rings off, and then these little bushings here. getting the third one pressed in there. I'm just taking the back of my adjustable wrench here because it has rubber on it, and I'm just barely putting pressure to make sure this seats. Go ahead and put these injectors in here now. It's a pretty tight fit, so you kind of gotta push a little hard and wiggle them in there until they seat all the way flush. This one. And they're all seated in there. Next step, we're just gonna take off all these O-rings and O-ring bushings. Got some brake clean on this paper towel. Go ahead and clean the area around where the bushing is gonna sit, so that way it has a good seal. These bushings will just slip right over top of your injector. Pull that all the way down. And then just replace this little ring here. Take a pick. Just try to get underneath it. Like that. And then just slip it right over. And if you can see, there's little cracks in the rings there. And that's why you want to replace all of your O-rings no matter what. If you have your engine apart, you might as well. They're pretty cheap. I think they're like $2 or something on Rock Auto each pack. So you might as well just replace them. I'm gonna do that to the rest of them. Getting this last little ring on and done. All the injectors are done, and now we can throw the intake manifold gasket on, and we can throw the plenum gasket on and put this all back together, and we'll have a running and driving car soon. Got the new intake manifold gasket, so we're gonna go ahead and put this on. And we can throw our manifold on. Pop the plenum off so we can get the gasket on here. New gasket. Don't forget to put your hoses back on underneath the intake. That hose and then this hose here. And then tighten those down. And then we can put the plenum on after we bolt the manifold back to the head. To get the manifold back on, you have those two long bolts, one here, two medium bolts there, there. Get those nuts back on those studs there and there. And then there's one smaller 10 or 12 millimeter down here. Now that we got the intake all tightened up, let's throw this plenum on. Plenum's all tight. One bolt there, there, and there on the back side. And then these two nuts and washers here. And good to go. We're gonna go ahead and put the fuel rail on, so that way we can get these injectors all plugged up. Fuel rail in. Now we gotta go ahead and get the valve cover back on, and then lastly we will put the oil pan back on. Dropping the valve cover. Take out your gasket, so you can put the new one in. And then go ahead and put some gasket underneath the rubber half moons, front and back. Let them seal, and then get this washed out with brake clean. We got the new gasket in. We're gonna go ahead and put this back on the engine. Valve cover torqued down. Throw on the alternator, going ahead and throwing on the power steering bracket. We get the oil pan all sealed up. So the entire engine is now sealed. All we need to do is get the exhaust headers on and gaskets. We got the idler pulley and we got the power steering pump now rebuilt and put back on the engine. So we're good to go to have this come off the stand and start replacing the rear main seal. And then we can also get those headers back on there. So moving on to the exhaust manifold, we have the 2 gaskets right here. We're gonna go ahead and throw it on. I went ahead and I tried to weld this stud in, but it didn't really stick too well, but this one stuck. We got new studs in there. I had to drill out the old ones because they broke in half. So now that we have the studs in here, we can go ahead and throw this back on, so that way the downpipe can connect back to this with no problems. This is a temporary solution because I will be going turbo. We're also just gonna give the headers a little light coat of this black high heat paint, just so that way it doesn't look all gross like that. We got the chain back on the engine, so that way we could lift it up with the hoist. We just got to get that all set up, and then we can do the rear main seal as this is on the hoist, and throw the rest of the clutch kit on, and then put the trans back onto the motor, and then we are closer to dropping it in. Getting the hoist set up. We're going to go ahead and lower this just a little bit. We don't want that to be hanging up there too high. Right about there. And then we can go ahead and continue to do the rear main seal. So let's get right on that. So you're gonna have to undo all of these bolts here, and then 2 at the bottom of the oil pan. I wish I did not put my oil pan on and use the gasket stuff, but we're gonna have to do this either way. So technically we have to redo this part of the oil pan seal, but that's okay. I still have some extra gaskets. Going ahead and putting these all in order, so that way I don't cross-thread anything. Or we have all the bolts out. We have the oil pan bolts here, and then the rear main seal carrier bolts here, and we're gonna go ahead and knock this loose. It took some finagling, but we did get it off. I wasn't able to get my rear main seal out of this little pocket here without taking the entire thing off, so we're gonna go ahead and reseal the portion of the pan that has the carrier here. And also along the back of here, we got to clean inside of these grooves and pop the rear main seal out and put in the new one, so that way we can have everything all fresh back here. We got to just take out all this nasty stuff, get all this pan clean, and then we should be good to go to throw it right back in. You don't have to do this, but I did. I just went ahead and threw some paper in here, paper towel, just in case if anything goes into the pan by accident. We don't want that. There is a little hole down here, but we should be okay. I'm gonna go ahead and scrape this all off clean. Now that you got this all clean, go ahead and take your old rear main seal out of here. Mine seems to have melted itself to the housing. We have our new rear main seal in place. Now we have to just go ahead and push it in there. I was just able to push mine in with my fingers, and it is a really tight fit. So we're gonna go ahead and put some gasket on the back end of this. Got the carrier and the rear main seal back in here, and we're just letting this dry for about an hour before we torque down all the bolts. But getting torqued down pretty good. With the actual housing here, you want to go crisscross, just as to about everything, so that way everything is evenly torqued down. So we can go ahead and start throwing our clutch assembly on, and then we can get our transmission in, and this should be ready to drop in. Alright, so we have a stage 3 clutch kit and flywheel. from the Clutch Max. I've used these a few times. I've never really actually had an issue with them, so I went ahead and stuck with it. Got the pressure plate and flywheel here. Nice brand new. So with the motor back on the hoist, we can go ahead and throw it in. I'm gonna save it for the next video just because this video is super long and I'm sure you guys don't want to keep watching a hour video. So with that being said, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for keeping up with the progress of my 240. It means a lot, and I'll see you guys next time. Appreciate it. Leave a like, comment, subscribe.